Hello, I want to welcome you to our love studio. And today we have a special guest in the studio right here with us. This is talking about the person of Doug Burton. I've known Doug Burton over the years in all his investigative reports. And today, Doug is here with us in the capacity of the editor in chief of Truth Nigeria. Mr. Doug, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Juma. It's an honor again to be with you.
Good. Before we go into some of the things that I want us to look at today, it's in the field of social media today, that whole space, there's several reports, several videos, and so many things. Some of them, because of the times and the age we live in, most are beginning to question how true are these things, because we are in the era of AI, artificial intelligence. And so because of technological possibilities, there are those who think some of these things are AI generated. And so, but there is the need to correct some of these things. I want you to watch this clip. Incidentally, it is a clip that is public now, and I want to get your reaction after we watch this. So let's listen to Judge Saul.
You cannot ignore the fact that there is Nigerian government complicity with these attacks. You saw some of our journalists in the documentary. We wanted to be an organization that tells the truth about what's happening in Nigeria, hence truthnigeria.com. I want to just kind of let everybody know and help you understand how Nigerian news works. If a Nigerian government official does not call for a news conference, the event did not exist. So in order for the narrative to get to the mainstream media, get picked up by Al Jazeera, get picked up by CNN, everything else, it comes from a Nigerian government source. From the very beginning, they determine the narrative. The reporters regurgitate the government narrative. We decided to be a voice and try to help change that paradigm, and created Truth Nigeria to document what is actually happening. How many of you guys know that there were 10 Christians killed in Kaduna just the other day? How many of you know that there were 30 Christians killed in Plateau just a week ago? How many of you know that besides the 280 Christians that were killed in Yellowwater on June 13th, we are now about over 500 Christians that have been killed total since Yellowwater? No one knows. The media is not reporting it. Well, that's why we formed Truth Nigeria, to talk about what is going on. But also, what we pointed out in the documentary that I'd like everybody to realize is that Truth Nigeria had information that the attack on Yellowwater was going to occur 3 weeks before the attack happened. Now, when we get a terror alert, we find information, we know attacks are going to occur. Our method is we issue a terror alert on our website, truthnigeria.com, but we also immediately call the local authorities. We notify the Nigerian military, the DSS, the Nigerian government, to let them know this is what we found out, this is our intelligence. Now, a day before the attack, we got word that there's movement happening. They are mobilizing, and they are coming for Yellowwater. So the day before, our team notified the government, the local authorities, the army, the police, and said, hey, there's movement, they're coming, watch out. What happened? Absolutely nothing. The government stood by and did nothing with advance warning multiple times. In fact, there's a military fob with soldiers that was less than a kilometer away while the attacks were going on, shooting warning shots in the air, but did not engage the terrorists as people were being burned to death, hacked to death with machetes, and being slaughtered.
All right. You heard that. This is Judge Saul, who happened to be one of the founders of Truth Nigeria. Now, can you respond to this very video?
Well, Juma, that's one of the most specific and factual videos that you will ever see about what's called the Christian genocide in Nigeria. It's absolutely true that 258 unarmed people were killed in the town of Yelawata on the night of June 13th, June 14th of this year, and they could have been rescued. That attack could have been prevented. Every single life lost that night could have been prevented because the Nigerian military base was only a 25-minute drive away in the state capital of Makurdi. That attack started at 10:30 and it went on for at least 3.5 to 4 hours. Those people died as martyrs. They could have been saved. There's no doubt that there is complicity of military authorities with the terrorism in Nigeria. And Truth Nigeria is pledged to tell the truth in a factual and dispassionate way.
So this little clip we saw now, I believe, is an extract from a press conference that happened in July.
That's right, July 24th.
24th July 2025. And this attack happened in June. Now, one of the things that Joe did say here was that the local authorities were informed before this very event.
That's correct. Truth Nigeria has posted 95 security alerts. These are terror alerts on our website. And all of these alerts are notifications to the world and certainly to Nigerian authorities in advance of what we think are going to be terror attacks. According to our records, 89% of these terror alerts are predicting. That means they are followed by actual attacks in which people are killed. 89%, that's a good record.
Okay, during this press conference or press briefing, right, were there other notable individuals that were present, or this was just perhaps only Judd presenting the...
Oh, no. This press conference was packed with subject experts and with very important people in the U.S. government. There was Chris Smith, who's a congressman and member of the Foreign Relations Committee and chairman of the Africa Committee was there. The prize-winning journalist, the TV journalist Laura Logan was there. She was the producer of an amazing documentary on Nigeria that was streamed on Fox Nation in 2021. There were representatives of major media there. There's a camera crew from the Christian Broadcasting Network, and they did a great piece on Nigeria about 6 weeks later. And there were print journalists as well.
I'm familiar with the works of Lara Logan, and here is something of interest to me. Lately, the President of the United States, President Donald Trump, he had made a statement, public statement, regarding his concern about what is going on in Nigeria. And there are those who think that this was perhaps as a response to what Reverend Ezekiel Dachoma, having gone public lately on social media, they are thinking this is a direct response to that. But looking at this conference, this happened way back in July, which means even the U.S. government and its officials, since a congressman attended this conference, is aware of all of this that has been happening in Nigeria.
Oh, exactly, Juma. We've been providing the Truth Nigeria reports. We publish 1 or 2, sometimes 3 articles a day, and we've been doing this since June of 2023. So we provide them to the U.S. Congress and to media. So our content and the content of other truth-telling organizations has been seeping in to the U.S. government. So finally, it got to the attention of the president, and that's all to the good. People in Nigeria are celebrating, at least the persecuted Christians look upon it as the Lord answering their prayers. We've seen an avalanche of unusual reporting on mainstream news stations, really for the last 3 weeks. I would say from early October, we see a lot of reporting that we had never seen before on what's called the Christian genocide.
Yeah, you mentioned the word genocide. Sadly, there are those who are in denial that there is no genocide. Most of them, the narrative is that Americans are interested in Nigeria because of its resources?
Well, of course, we live in an age of false narrative, and really it's part of what we consider to be a civilizational crisis all over the world. The United States is very familiar with the term fake news media. Nigeria has its own fake news media. And in fact, many people say that we live in a fact-free world. But what distinguishes Truth Nigeria reporting is that we give sources. Our subject sources are quoted, they are named, and there are dates given. So we give facts when we report atrocities, when we report crimes. We say exactly geographically where they were and how many people were killed, how many people were kidnapped, and we give the names of these people. So that is why Truth Nigeria sets itself apart with the specificity, and it's why we're considered such a troublesome new media on the block.
I don't know about the troubles, but one of the claims of Judd is that there have been killings in Kaduna, in Benue, and in some other places that have not been reported by the mainstream media. And he went ahead to even highlight the part of Al Jazeera and CNN not picking up the news except if it's coming from Nigerian government officials.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now here is the thing. Today in Nigeria, there are a whole lot of attention and things going on. There are those who are pushing the narrative that President Trump is planning to attack Nigerians, leaving out the issue of the Christians who are being slaughtered in their numbers. And so, do you have records or reports to support that actually killings has been taking place?
Well, that's chiefly what we report, and it's the reason that Judd Saul hired me to bring reporters and organize Truth Nigeria in June of 2023. What we report is the terrible events that have been taking place actually for close to 2 decades. And what we are trying to do is give the victims their voices. Frequently, the victims themselves aren't talked to enough. The government narrative is prevalent, and so the government always wants to make itself look good, so it frequently undercounts the number of casualties. It frequently uses vague language to shield the fact that government forces are usually very nearby when these massacres take place. The military installations, the forward operating bases, the police stations are often quite close to where the attacks happened, like the attack in Yelawata on June 13th, 2014. There was a major army base just a 25-minute drive away. That attack could have been prevented. So when you report how the Nigerian government is obviously complicit or neglectful in rushing in to protect people, then naturally outrage is generated in Europe and the United States. Goes to reason. A Christian nation like the United States is outraged when Christians are persecuted in Nigeria. That's why the president is upset, and good for him.
Incidentally, this is not the first time President Trump is responding to the persecution and killings of Nigerians. I recall during one of the late president of Nigeria, Buhari, when he visited the White House, President Trump was said, overriding protocols to bring up the issue of the killings and persecutions of Christians, to which he demanded that be put to a stop. Do you recall this very incident?
Well, I remember seeing the video, and it's still online. And this was a White House ceremony that was intended to illustrate the alliance between the United States and Nigeria, whereby the U.S. was agreeing to sell Turkano fighter aircraft to Nigeria, and so President Muhammadu Buhari was sitting right next to Donald Trump, and the president unexpectedly brought up the fact that he was aware of these terrible killings in Nigeria. He said, "We talked about this, and we're going to talk about it more," and it greatly embarrassed Muhammadu Buhari, who didn't expect this to be brought up. But interestingly, after the president of Nigeria went back home, these attacks ceased for about 5 months. And this is something that many Nigerians in the Middle Belt have told me. After this embarrassing event, for some reason the attacks stopped. If the attacks are really caused by local farmer-herder clashes, if they are simply extemporaneous events, why would that have happened? It's a good question.
So, in other words, Buhari presented the narrative that this is just a local clash between herders and farmers, to which, when you look at it, these are natural resources, and if people are farming, and why would you want to come and graze in their land, which brought up the issue of policies about open grazing and all of that, to which, when looked at closely, simply means the government was in support of all of these things that was happening in some of these communities.
Well, of course, Muhammadu Buhari is the foremost supporter, and he's the elder statesman for his tribe, the Fulani people, who number as many as 10 million people in Nigeria. It's one of the major tribes, and of course it's one of the biggest ethnicities in Africa. Well, Muhammadu Buhari was a defender and an apologist for the radical jihadists in his own ethnicity, which is famous for cattle herding. So, of course, he was a defender and a shielder of the terrible crimes of these so-called bandits, who are actually Fulani ethnic militia, who he allowed to do these depredations, these horrible massacres and kidnappings, and his media, the people who were obsequious, members of the media to his regime, they helped cover it up. But now, since he's left and we have a new president over the last 2 years, there's a new sheriff in town. The media is emboldened by the fact that Truth Nigeria and other independent media, some sponsored by the United States, are telling the truth. So the truth is getting out, and it's embarrassment for the government.
Well, how embarrassing is this when part of the things out there now is that China has responded to the public statement of President Trump and more or less declaring their support to Nigeria, so which brings up the issue of what is the interest? Is it not economical? Because it appears there is this narrative that China is heavily involved in some business, whether shady or legal or illegal, in Nigeria.
Oh, well, the People's Republic of China is deeply invested in West Africa, especially in Nigeria, and is the #1 trading partner for the Nigerians. Of course, China would like to have a bigger share of the Nigerian economy. It's well known to have a huge infrastructure development program that's famous, called the Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to create infrastructure for commerce all over Africa. And the Chinese banks have financed the building of the only deep water port in Nigeria, in just outside of Lagos. So the Chinese would like to be closer to the Nigerian government, and of course they have made very large long-term development loans to Nigeria, but of course we don't know what their repayment terms are, because these loans are not transparent, and the Nigerians do not show signs of wanting to borrow more from China. They don't want to become dependent on China. They would rather get loans from the IMF and the World Bank. And that's why they are very concerned about their reputation facing Western governments.
You mentioned about deep water seashore. Can you explain more about that, and how did you come about this?
Well, I've reported about this for Epoch Times. Nigeria has a lot of coastline on the Gulf of Guinea, of course. And so their largest city, the largest city in Africa, is Lagos, with 20 million people. And the coastline just outside of Lagos is the island with the Lekki deep water port that was recently opened. I think it was just opened 2 years ago, with the financing and the engineering investment by China. Now, that port is actually owned by the People's Republic of China, and Nigeria is in the process of repaying the long-term loan for that port. If Nigeria reneges on that loan, then China can claim all of that territory as its own possession, and that would be fatal. And that would be a threat to U.S. security, because that deep water port could become a Chinese naval base. That would be catastrophic, for U.S. national security.
Would that be part of the reason why it is said that President Trump wants to build a military base in the southern part of Nigeria, in Port Harcourt, River State, which is, of course, close to the Atlantic Sea?
I don't know about that. I am not aware of any announced plans of the Trump administration to build any infrastructure in Port Harcourt. May be the case.
Okay, now let's look at it. Now, in the streets of Nigeria and among most people, there have been a concern, which is simply, trying to understand the U.S. interests. This is coming from the place of recalling what happened even in 2016 presidential campaign, when President Trump, he did made a statement, more or less accusing President Obama and the then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as being the ones who funded ISIS. And today we can say Boko Haram is an offshoot of ISIS. And so to which he equally responded and saying, well, that was a statement of sarcasm. But if you look at it, there is policies that the United States made which seem to have supported this group. And so how can people now be able to see beyond what could serve as a veil if the United States has been in the practice of coming up with policies that eventually leads to some of these terrorist groups?
Well, each administration in the United States has had a different public face. The Obama administration was clearly more interested in developing diplomatic relationships with Muslim governments. So, one of the first trips that President Obama made was to Saudi Arabia, and he actually he bowed to the Saudi king, which was controversial at the time. There's no doubt that the Obama administration favored the Muslim governors of Nigeria. I mean, the Obama administration wanted to help they wanted to help candidate Muhammadu Buhari win the election for president in 2015. Obama detailed his own campaign manager, David Axelrod, according to Lara Logan. He sent them to Nigeria to help in the election campaign for Buhari. You can't have a more personal support, a more close engagement than that with the U.S. administration. The Obama administration clearly wanted a Muslim to be the president in 2015. And sadly, the administration of Muhammadu Buhari has been catastrophic for Nigeria. The economy has shrunk every single year. He was the chief executive officer, and more than that, the number of killings of innocent people, the Christians in Nigeria, just soared during these 8 years.
Now, when you look at what happened back in 2011, it is on record that the United States military intervention with the so-called Libya experience, where Muammar Gaddafi was killed, it did show that the United States supported logistics support from behind, and to which the so-called NATO-led intervention was so orchestrated that today so many people question, how can Nigeria be sure that this is not what is trying to play out with what President Trump has said?
Well, interestingly, Juma, remember 2011 was the onset of the so-called Arab Spring, and the White House security infrastructure, the security team at that time thought that the Arab Spring meant the many Arab authoritarian dictatorships were going to shift into working democracies because it was the time when the whole world was turning toward democracy. So the Obama administration encouraged the Arab Spring and encouraged people that it thought were sincere advocates for democracy, but in many cases in Libya and in Syria and in other countries, the people who presented themselves as sincere Democrats, as people who were for constitutional democracy, they turned out to be Islamists in disguise. So that failed miserably. So we see the replay of this kind of policy establishment under the Obama administration, and with Donald Trump in the White House, there is a new emphasis. It is an emphasis upon seeing who are the real victims of these Arab Spring revolutions. The victims of these Islamist takeovers in North Africa, victims have been Christians. There are now dozens of Islamist insurgencies in West Africa and up the east coast of Africa. The greatest threat to peace in Africa today, and probably in the world, is Islamism. It's these radical jihadist movements that seek to create caliphates or authoritarian governments like what we see in Sudan. And Donald Trump has heard the cry of persecuted Christians. There is definitely a Christian genocide in Nigeria, and we see Christian genocide in other countries too, in Madagascar, for example, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So Donald Trump is simply responding to a human need. He's looking at the facts. He's looking at the situation as it is, and not through the lens of world government planners or the managerial elites who are calling the shots in Brussels.
Then what happens in 2011 when a UN building was attacked in Abuja, Nigeria, during the time of President Jonathan? And it's on record that Jonathan did reach out to America to assist. So the question becomes, why didn't they assist? Hold on with that thought. We're going to take a short break now. When we return, we still have Doug Burton in the studio, and we're going to look at a few things. Of course, there's so much that is going on. You are still tuned to God of Love Kingdom televisions, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.